Uh, This will be the March 9th meeting of the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell. I'd like to welcome everyone here, particularly the students from the Queen of Angels. If we'll rise, they'll come forward and lead us in the pledge. We'd all face the flag. Gentlemen, come forward to the microphone.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It is our pleasure tonight to have the award-winning students from the Queen of Angels. Come back, gentlemen. Our award-winning students from the Queen of Angels, and they're here to tell us about their award and give us some advice.
We represent the Queen of Angels Catholic School from Roswell, and 4 of our teams went to the regional Future City competition, and all the 4 teams got one special award, and their team members are going to be introducing them.
The People's Choice Award.
All right, the way we begin, start off by introducing yourself and your team members, and then go into the award. Because we don't know who you are.
I'm Alex Bauman. Our mentor is Mr. Jim Remick. This is Billy Vandemark, and this is Daniel Pochel.
Proceed.
Thank you. The People's Choice Award is an award that everyone chooses. Everyone in all the teams vote for their favorite model, and the model with the most votes wins the People's Choice Awards.
And did you win the People's Choice Award?
Yes.
You want to hold
sir.
it up for us all to see? Congratulations. Now, what was the model? Was it a model of a city?
It was a model of a portion of the city.
You want to tell us briefly what the portion of your city looked like and why people loved it?
Well, it was called Bayside Plateau, and you can see an underground transit system. There's a subway, and there was also underneath a plateau which was raised. We raised it with wood, and it was the plateau represented the residential zone. There was also a river there that which supplied the water system.
Sounds great.
And
Anything else y'all want to add about that project? Do we have something to display?
That right picture.
Great. And who's going to present next? You won more awards. Come on.
Hi, I'm Christian Wood, and I represent Collaboration City. And my team was Elliot Brewer, Abby Jessen, and my mentor was Mrs. Volpe.
And what award did y'all win?
We won Best Residential Zone.
And what distinguished your project from the others?
Probably our residential zone was different from everybody else's because it was a mix of the industrial zone and the commercial zone all mixed together, and we were able to do that because we canceled out most of the pollution that the industrial zone causes, and the commercial zone just kind of blended in. And since it was all together, we didn't have to have cars or anything for people to move around, and if they did, they could still use cars, but they really didn't need them, and it avoided a lot of pollution.
Great. Thank you. Let's have a hand for those boys.
I'm Chris Hegemeyer, and my team was Ethan Cerrone, Sean Dever, and my mentor was Todd Hegemeyer. We won Best Transportation System because we had flying buses, track cars, and 2 walk-ins from building to building. Our model is listed in the top right corner. We also won Best SimCity Simulation, which was a computer model that we worked on while we were working on our city.
What were the walk-ins? I didn't catch that. The flying buses I can see, but the walk-ins...
They're basically tubes that you walk through with moving sidewalks between building to building.
Well, that's great. Let's have a hand for those young men.
Hello, I'm Joey Paris, and I represent the city of Jacksonville. My team members were Meet Calarackle and Tommy Ristow, and our mentor, Mrs. B.G. Calarackle. At regionals, we won the Best Transit for All award, and we also finished first place of all the teams in Georgia. And then when we went to nationals, we won the Best Land Surveying Practices.
Now, where was the nationals competition?
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. That sounds like a great trip.
It was awesome.
Let's congratulate those young men. Now, my council are politicians, so they love to get their picture taken. So they would like to come down and get their picture taken with you all and your awards if that's possible. All right, if you'll come up here and we'll come down and join you and we'll get our picture taken with you, and we'd love the opportunity. We want K-Love and our planning department to come up here too.
Squeeze in like you like each other.
Behind you. Hold up your workers. Smile. Thank you. Tonight we have a short agenda. I'm not sure it's going to be nearly as exciting as flying buses and moving tubes. So, gentlemen, if you need to go home, feel comfortable to leave. You've got a great future in city planning. I can see that. Thank you for coming down. Tonight, Councilman Eigelhart and Councilman Henry are absent with an excuse. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilmember Becky Wynn. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time I'll call upon Councilmember Richard DiPolito, liaison to the Community Development Department, which is our wonderful planning department. No flying buses, but we or plateaus made out of wood, but we're doing what we can.
I like the tube idea. I mean,
there's no lack of creativity in that group.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll put the flying buses on the next committee agenda. The first item this evening is RZ 08-17 CV 08-03 Crossville Hardscrabble LLC at the corner of Hardscrabble Road and Highway 92. Land lots 188 and 294. The applicant is requesting a deferral. Mr. Townsend.
This is a rezoning as well as a conditional variance with a rezoning at the Hardscrabble and Woodstock 92. The applicant is requesting a deferral till the April 13th Mayor and Council zoning meeting.
Does anyone here on that subject? Do we have a motion?
Move to defer until the April 13th Mayor and Council zoning meeting.
Motion for deferral by Councilmember DiPolito. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Tolleson. All in favor of the motion, raise your hands. Passes unanimously.
Next item on the agenda is RZ08-16, a text amendment regarding sidewalk cafes. This is the second reading. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Councilman DePolito. This is a second reading of the Sidewalk Cafe. This is for an ordinance to allow for the public use of the sidewalks along Canton Street, to allow them to serve food and alcoholic beverages on the public sidewalks. This ordinance will require that the ADA be in conformance for all licenses that are issued for the Sidewalk Cafe. The ordinance includes definitions, requirements, an administrative fee, as well as an annual fee. There are drawings or sketches required, as well as HPC approval, liability, and insurance. Also required in the ordinance is a way for, if they do not meet the standards, that the administration can remove the license or get corrections made. Staff has had a preliminary review by the Historic Preservation Commission in the providing a minimum specifications for types of furniture, barriers, as well as umbrellas. They will be able to be pre-approved if they meet the standards that HPC has already set out. I believe that's in your backup material. Included with this ordinance, there's a resolution that will require the fees, the registration fee of $300, a change or addition to the original license of a $100 fee, as well as an annual fee of $50 if there are no changes. This is to cover administrative costs in processing the license. Staff would recommend that the second reading of the Sidewalk Cafe ordinance be approved, as well as the resolution establishing the fees be approved.
What is the effective date? When will they have to be in compliance?
We'll probably, if the ordinance passes this evening, we have been in contact with all of the residents or the current licensees out there. Hopefully we can get them within compliance within 60 to 90 days.
The question is, when does the ordinance, I know we want to get them in compliance as soon as possible, but
the ordinance
they will be out of compliance immediately if we pass it tonight?
Yes.
How long do we think would be reasonable to give them to come into compliance? So that I know that they need to...
90 days.
90 days. I would suggest that we look at rather than having them out of compliance and then potentially cited, I'd rather have a deferred effective date and give them, and if they're not in compliance on that date, cite them. How do you feel about that? Or is that going to affect anything? I don't want them to assume if I've got 90 days and I'll have another 90 days. I'm just saying that I'd rather have a reasonable period of time to come into compliance, give them warning, and then when they're out of compliance, take action, rather than having a 90-day non-compliance period. What are your thoughts?
It's fine with me. Whenever they make, we need the ordinance on the books for it to be effective. So
I understand, I'm in full support of this ordinance, and I'm supporting the council. I just want the council to consider deferring the effective date so that not to give them an additional time, but but I'm just saying a reasonable time from the passage and from the getting the notice of these things. Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've been doing this for how long, Brad? 6 months? 7 months?
Yeah.
And we've more or less had a moratorium on any type of citations. I just don't see why this ordinance can't go in effect immediately and just kind of keep it, give them the warning. Mm-hmm. And I think if we put it for another 60 or 90 days, they're going to go to the 89th day before they come into compliance. So I would rather say go in effect immediately and just kind of a little slap on the wrist and say, hey, it's in effect now and you've got to do it.
Right.
If we have the understanding that they're going to have a reasonable time now that the HPC has established the guidelines, I think that was a key provision. That I just don't want to see folks cited tomorrow.
Well, I think it's more of a warning, and if they're in the process of going through the HPC, then that kind of gives them that immunity to any type of citations anyway. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So if they have applied to the HPC Even though they don't have a license, they would be immune from being cited?
Effective on adoption of the ordinance, we're going to go hand them a license and says, this is what you need to come in and sign. Bring it in within the next 2 weeks. Let's get you processed through to get you to mayor and council for the approval of the license.
Yeah, I think what's going to take the longest, and it shouldn't take too long, and that is putting the posts in and transitioning the furniture. I just want to be comfortable that we're going to give a reasonable time. Now that we've got the HPC and we know what the final rules are to come in, as long as we have that understanding, I'm fine.
That's our understanding, Mayor.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Do we have Councilman Orland?
A couple questions, Brad. One, the pre-approved HPC specs are part of the ordinance, correct?
Yes.
Because I know there was some discussion back and forth about plain awnings or awnings having some designs on them, which is part of the flavor. So basically, we're adopting plain umbrellas.
With no logos, correct.
With no logos.
Correct.
And if they want something different, they will specifically go to the HPC and request it.
Correct.
And then in the colors, that was another thing about the poles, the barriers. For the record, when you say black or non-shiny, what colors can that include?
There are a list of historic or heritage paint colors.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about?
Yeah, they're actually a catalog that has those heritage type of colors that we utilize for the historic area.
The way this is worded, we interpret it to refer to that? We're not saying heritage color. Okay.
Yes.
And then the other question I have is for the, what's the name of the one that's one that's red?
Red Salt?
Yes, Red Salt. They're going to have the most problem in creating a wide enough sidewalk area.
Yes.
And then there's a question about them expanding the sidewalk out. Has there been any communication with them? Are they planning on doing that?
There have been some discussions with the Transportation Department in dealing with the intersection of Webb Street and how it interacts with the 2 parking spaces that are in front of Red Salt. I don't think there's been a final design determined as of yet, because there's some discussion of increasing the sidewalk on the Webb Street side of the building also. So those conversations are ongoing at this point.
So if we allow, as Mayor and Councilwoman Wynn were talking about, if we put it in effect today and we allow everybody approximately 60 days to get it in place, I'm assuming they're not going to have that set.
Probably
and they're
not.
going to have to clear the sidewalk. Is that a fair statement?
They will have to comply with the ADA requirements and come into, yes.
And your department staff is going to allow 60 days? I mean, is that what we're putting in a record tonight for 60 days? Or
we'll be reasonable in dealing with making sure they come into compliance.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Davidson, if you'd read the ordinance.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Article 10, specific use requirements of the zoning ordinance of the City of Roswell. Now, therefore, to accomplish the foregoing, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following ordinance. Article 10, specific use requirements, is amended by adding thereto a new Chapter 10.39, sidewalk cafes, as shown on Exhibit A, attached here to and incorporated herein by reference. If approved, this would be the second reading of the ordinance.
Do we have a motion for approval?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to break this into 2 separate motions, one for the text amendment and one for the resolution. My first motion is to approve RZ 08-16, a text amendment regarding sidewalk cafes.
Motion for approval by Councilmember DiPolito. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
The second motion is to approve the resolution to adopt a fee schedule for sidewalk cafes.
Do we need to read that?
No, sir.
What is that fee? Well, you want to just summarize that fee schedule very quickly?
$300 registration fee for changes or additions to the original license, a $100 fee, and an annual $50 fee.
Just a question. How did we ever finally resolve if they want to have tables but not sell alcohol when they have the permission from the adjacent store owner?
I believe the determination was dealing with the beverage section of the code, that you have to have control of the premise, and that the control by the state statute extends out from their wall instead of to the adjoining property. So they could have tables or chairs but not serve alcohol if they choose to license that area.
And I guess the next question is, would that be 2 registrations or 1? If you have permission,
good question.
I know where the Cervici is. They apparently have the permission from their adjacent property owner to spill over, and would they have to have a separate license with one covered if they get a signature from their neighboring?
How do you think we'd want to handle it, David?
I'd just soon do it with 1, but I'm just trying to clear it up.
I think it would be better to have like
2.
a sublet.
A sublease license or something like that?
But you'd have 2 licenses. Each
right.
storefront would have to have a license. He could sublet it.
That way the address
in front of their building.
The address sticks with the license kind
right.
of thing. Okay.
I appreciate you clearing that up. Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll repeat my motion to approve the resolution to adopt a fee schedule for sidewalk cafes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Wynn. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion? Passes unanimously.
Next item on the agenda is initiation of a text amendment regarding tree pruning. Mr. Townsend.
This ordinance this text amendment came to committee. It's recommended for initiation, dealing with our current text regarding tree pruning. We're getting a little bit more descriptive, as well as including the ANSI standards in dealing with tree pruning. Staff would recommend the initiation of the text amendment.
Do you want to summarize this for us?
There was a code enforcement case in which the court threw out our current language dealing with tree pruning, felt it was too ambiguous, and it's now been redrafted by the legal department to include standards, and staff would recommend approval.
Do we have a motion for approval of the initiation?
Move to approve the initiation of a text amendment regarding tree pruning.
Motion for approval by Councilmember DiPolito. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Tollison. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Councilman Orleans.
Again, Brad, just want to clarify. If this goes through, then it applies to every single tree in the city?
In
private property, backyard,
yes,
front yard, whatever.
Related to pruning of trees, correct.
And professionals that are doing this, of course, should know to come in and look for permits. Mm-hmm. The homeowner who goes out and trims up his tree is not going to think about this at all. So I guess since we're just initiating it, I'm putting that as food for thought going mm-hmm. forward, that you can bring up with the Planning Commission and get some discussion on it.
Okay.
Because even in cutting down a tree, we only require it for someone that has over an acre. So I don't know how we're going to police this or how people are going to be aware of this. So those are my concerns going forward.
Okay.
So are we, in essence, extending the tree ordinance to all trees, regardless of where?
Well, just the pruning, from what I'm reading, it still only applies over an acre to cut a tree down.
I know, but
I think.
So, but you could cut it down, but you couldn't prune it?
Right. Well, no. You can cut it down if you have less than an acre without the city being involved, but you cannot prune it if you have less than an acre unless the city's involved. Right.
That doesn't seem logically consistent.
No, it doesn't. So flush that out in the process, Brad.
Okay.
How big does this tree have to be a tree? What's the diameter?
I think there are minimum criteria for different species.
Because I take my little clippers out, and I'm pruning trees all the time on
I have one more quick question, Brad. Is our old ordinance on pruning, did that apply to everything in the city?
I'm taking the whole damn tree down.
I believe so.
Do you know?
It did. All we did was change the definition of pruning. We didn't make it apply to anything new or anything. This is the same way it's always been. We just actually changed the definition of topping, and then we included the actual standards as an attachment to the ordinance because the judge said that the standards were not included in the other ordinance, so we just attached them, and the standards are there.
So that ordinance must have been pretty old. Because I don't remember discussing it in the last 17 years I've been on council. All right, thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion to initiate? With those reservations about, I'm not sure exactly what this ordinance is going to say, but I have reservations about saying you can't prune a tree, but you can cut it down. That doesn't seem to be consistent, and I'd rather stay out of the small tracts pruning. Next item, please.
Next item is initiation of a text amendment regarding changeable copyboard signage and LEDs. Mr. Townsend.
This issue has been before Mayor and Council at committee as well as work sessions in dealing with changeable copyboard signage and LED signage. We currently have a moratorium related to LED signage. What is being brought before you for initiation controls signage in the manner that these current signs would not be permitted to allow them to have changeable copy. The gas station sign, the temperature and time sign would be a couple of signs that would be exempt and be allowed. These signs would be allowed as the text amendment is being drafted and initiated. These signs would also be allowed because they use the LED as a light source that it's behind and is controlled by a dimmer or a photocell. Staff would recommend the initiation of the text amendment that controls changeable copy signs and LED signage.
Brad, excuse me, Brad, again, we're initiating that. I know we've had some discussions and even the last committee meeting about the determining any kind of brightness and dealing with these signs. Mm-hmm. Are you still researching that to try to get it involved in this process maybe before it's finished?
Yes. Well, I did research some of the issues with the photocells, as Councilman DiPolito had requested. They can be attached to any sign. They're a nominal cost, like $50 when they're installed with the new sign. And then that photocell can be adjusted to dim it down as it gets darker or it gets brighter, then the sign would get brighter.
Is there any way of a measurement, a calibration or something that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that we can?
I'm going to try and get my hands on some of these to find out the actual operation and how they are controlled. Okay. And that'll be flushed out through the process, hopefully.
And then require that to be part of them at least for the dimming purpose, and then
right.
Determining how we can dim them at a later date or in part of this.
Yes.
Thank you.
We're focusing on the brightness of LEDs.
The discussion of this discussion was on that, correct?
We worry about the brightness of halogen lights or incandescent lights or fluorescent lights when they come to signs.
The current code deals with illumination in dealing with if it does disturb or is the surrounding glare to the surrounding properties is how it's currently standard.
I guess my point is if brightness is a legitimate concern, then you can have it, whether it's LED or fluorescent or halogen or sodium or whatever else they have, it can be too light. It's really a factor of how much juice you put to that thing.
Right.
So if the council is very concerned about brightness, I don't understand why we're only focusing on LEDs. If brightness applies across the board, that's a real concern.
The language could be drafted to be across the board of the brightness of a sign, not specifically for the LED.
Councilman Orleans.
Well, some of the thought process, and again, I'm not an expert on this, but we do have limitations on other types of lights and the candle power they're putting out. But these types of lights, when you go down the freeway and you see the billboards that are made out of these, kind of like the difference of a high definition television, they just really pop out at you. So they can create a much, much brighter light that can be infringing. And so I think that was one of the concerns in those kind of signs starting to crop up through the city, that we should try to look at the brightness of them, or if there's a way to somewhat control that. And it may be the same way candle power, I don't know. But I'm just concerned because of how much brighter they are.
What I understood is that we currently govern brightness not by candle power or lumens or watts, but by is it disturbing.
Right.
So the point is we don't limit candle power, we don't limit watts on our current sign. So if the council's concern is about brightness, I think you either need to say apply it across the board rather than just to LED lights. It doesn't make sense to say LED lights are not inherently brighter than any other lights. I can tell you, halogen's a hell of a lot brighter than LEDs. They just take a lot more power. So, and if you're logically looking at this, and brightness is a concern, I didn't understand why we were limiting it to LED, and maybe staff would look at that too.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the initiation of a text amendment regarding changeable copyboard signage and LEDs.
Motion by Councilmember DiPolito. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Wynn. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. We're adjourned.